Hey, this is James Wasem, best-selling author of Live Streaming Your Business, and we're with Jan Ilunga and the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast.
This is episode 210, and this is the second and final part of this conversation on live streaming. Here we go.
Welcome to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, the show for entrepreneurs and small business owners who dream big and want to do bigger. Join some of the world's top entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and best-selling authors as they share their inspiring stories, their struggles, and give actionable tips that will help you build, grow, and promote your online business. Here's your host, Jan Ilunga.
Hey, welcome to episode 210, which is actually the second and final part of a conversation we're having here on live streaming. Last week, we kicked things off with James Wasem, who is a live streaming expert, musician, and best-selling author. And in the first part of the conversation, so in episode 209, we started to talk about live streaming in terms of the strategy. So why live streaming, what live streaming can do for you, some of the things to think about before you get started, as well as the gear you would need. So we talked about components you can have to improve both the video and audio side of things. So if you're here but you haven't checked out the first episode, I would recommend listening to that first. And the page for that is janilunga.com/episode 209. If you listened to part 1 already, great, then I know you're ready for part 2. In today's interview, James shares advice on the light. He talks about the internet connection and what you should pay attention when it comes to that, as well as tips for having people take action when watching your live streaming, and some things you can do to actually monetize your live streams. The show notes for today's episode with the links to everything James and I are covering in this second part of the conversation is over at janilunga.com/episode 210. Again, that's janilunga.com/episode 210. All right, without further ado, here is the second part of the conversation on live streaming with James Wasem from jameswasem.com. So James, now with what we've been talking about here, I think we have a good idea of why live streaming, what to think about before getting started, how to choose the quote-unquote right platform, the gear, and things like that. And we're almost ready to go. But there is one thing we actually forgot to talk about, or I forgot to ask you, I should say, which has to do with the light. So whether we want to live stream indoors or outdoors, we have to make sure that we don't record from a dark room or there is too much sunlight or things like that. So what advice do you have when it comes to being in a place where the light is good?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we kind of touched on the importance of that a little bit when we talked about web cameras and kind of that dynamic range issue, or the issue of covering areas that are really dark to light, or changes in the lighting. And that definitely happens inside, or like concert venues or other events where there's lighting effects or other things going on. But even in instances where you're in your home office or a conference room or outside doing kind of a live on the street type of streaming episode, you want to make sure that you're kind of in a stable area lighting wise, so that you're getting good, consistent viewing. Some of the worst live streaming experiences actually look and sound okay, except for you can't see the person's face. That's a tragedy, because everything else is flawless. The stream quality is good. The audio sounds great, but I can't see the person. So, there's a few quick tips to help you through that. And one of those is to make sure that your background lighting is not as strong as the lighting in front of you. You want to make sure the light in front, or what's called the key light, is much stronger than your background lighting. And what that does, it allows the camera to actually focus in on you properly instead of picking up the brighter areas behind you. That's something that's a pretty simple concept, but it's amazing how easily we kind of forget that until we kind of look at the image and then we're like, oh yeah, how do we fix that?
Right.
And it happens to me all the time. I'll do a live stream or a Skype call or something, and I'll finally notice that, oh, I've got a lamp behind me or some sort of window or something that's actually a stronger lighting source than what's in front of me. And it puts my face in shadow, or it just doesn't allow the camera to pick things up properly. So that's probably the big thing. You could get even more complicated if you want to and do like a 3 or 4 point lighting setup where you have a couple lights in front of you, one kind of on the back wall, maybe adding some color or some sort of backdrop lighting. Some people will even do like a hair light if you're in a studio. So it kind of gives some accent to the top of your head or the upper areas. So there's a number of different tricks. Some of the new live streaming rigs that are out there for like handheld or portable use what's called a ring light. And that's really great for lighting a single individual's face that's right in front of the camera. And it gives really good depth and focus right on the face and kind of starts to wash out some of that background area very quickly so that visual focus is right front and center. So those are just some things to pay attention to. You don't have to get super elaborate, but if you just pay attention to that, foreground and background lighting relationship, that'll go a long way in helping you look as good as possible on the live stream.
And by the way, for those interested in knowing more about the light, is also something you talk about in the book, and you even have images where you really explain and show kind of what angle the light should be coming from, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a few different examples of that. And I've got some other diagrams that kind of indicate kind of some suggested best tips and things like that. So definitely worth checking out. And like I said, even in the gear section of some of my recommendations on the website, I've got some different lighting setups and things you could do, whether you're in the studio or portable. And there's a lot of battery-powered LED lights that are great that you can put up in front of you or put behind a diffuser or something, and you get great lighting for pretty lightweight and cheap and compact setup. So
awesome. Thank you so much, James. And I think I have one more question related to the technical side of live streaming, because we've talked about the visual side, webcams, audio, we talked about the light now. And the question I have for you has to do with the internet connection. And I know that, for example, when it comes to webinars, that's something, I don't know how many people have talked about. You have to make sure that you have a stable connection and this and that. So when it comes to live streaming and an internet connection, do you have any insight?
Yeah, it's funny when we talk about live streaming, we get hung up talking about all the gear and the platforms and the apps and the software and all these different things, which, that's all great. And it gets kind of that front row seat in the discussion. Right. But oftentimes we forget about the most fundamental aspect, which is, are you connected to the internet? And is that connection fast enough to support a true live stream and a quality connection? So when you're doing audio only, the bandwidth or the data that you send back and forth online is much lower than when you add video to that. And video with just a talking head or somebody sitting still in a chair has less data than if you were to show a concert or a person walking down the street with cars going by or something like that. Anytime you add motion to your video, you're going to increase the amount of information that needs to be sent online. So having the internet speed and the gear to support that kind of activity is super important. You can want to live stream all day long, but if you don't have the internet speed where you are, you need to try to fix that problem first. So the number one thing, test your internet speed. Use a free service like speedtest.net. There's a few other sites out there, but you can test your internet speed. And you want to pay attention not to the download speed so much as your upload speed. Because when you're live streaming, you're sending information up to the web. And if you don't have good, stable upload speed, then you'll have issues with, the image stalling out. Sometimes you might not even sync up properly with the live streaming service, and the users trying to download it may have a great download connection, to the stream, but because of your compromised upload connection, if it's not fast enough, it'll stall out or buffer and do all kinds of things. So you want to have a good upload connection, and it depends on how high a quality of video you're sending out. The average user sending a 720p resolution, which is still HD quality live stream, you can often get by with 3 megabits per second or so upload speed. The higher, the better in that respect. The minimum you want to live stream with video is going to be about 1 megabit per second. So you want to pay attention to that. You can get by with less if you tweak some of the settings in your gear. But 1 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot. I like to shoot for 3 to 5 or better if possible for the upload speed. Download speed doesn't matter quite as much with live streaming from the broadcaster perspective.
There you have it. Make sure, as James said, to test your internet connection, and you're going to find the links to everything James and I have talking about here, including the site he mentioned to test your internet connection, in the show notes. And obviously, since you want your viewers to have a flawless experience, you want to make sure, as James said, that you have a solid internet connection so that you come in good both visually and audio, and that everything is in sync and there isn't any big delay. All right, James, I think that we've talked about the gear, we talked about hosting a live stream a little bit, and I think there is another question when it comes to hosting the live stream that I have to ask you. Actually, there are two questions. Let me change that. The first one is, once we are live streaming, so you talked about early on in the first part of this conversation, you talked about the importance of having an idea before we start the stream. So like why we want to stream, what is the action we would like people to take, and so forth. So when it comes to the call to action, we want people who are watching our stream to take, whether that's sign up for our newsletter, download something, or so forth. How should we go about that while we are streaming?
Well, I think that that fits in with your business goals, and of course why you're streaming in the first place. Let's say you're setting up for an event and you do several streams leading up to the event, kind of promotional streams. Your call to action should be to join the invitation group, whether that's a Facebook group or a e-invite or something like that, or to sign up on the email list so you get notifications as the event gets closer. Maybe you're doing a different type of product launch or a course launch or a podcast launch or something like that. So having a call to action that gets people to engage with you beyond the live streaming channel is an important thing. And it needs to match up with the content that you're speaking to in your live stream. You don't want to do a live stream and then send somebody off to an unrelated page or offer to sign up for that doesn't match up with anything you were saying. It's like building a good landing page or any other good opt-in offer. You want to make sure there's relevance with the audience and the content, and that it's consistent in terms of how you're handing off the audience from the live stream to your other platforms of engagement. Maybe that's simply doing a live stream on Facebook Live and having somebody like your page or share a post. Maybe that's doing something with Periscope and you're trying to get more Twitter followers or more people to engage you on that social media platform. Or it could be a private channel on your website where you're trying to get people to sign up for the next available course or other product that you offer. So think through kind of the strategy and how you want to layer the different call to actions within different live streaming functions that you might be doing.
And when it comes to what you just said about, thinking what the call to action is and so forth, would you recommend trying to make that something that can be done also by those who are maybe watching the replay, so they weren't able to join us live, but they are still watching the replay? Or would you say that it's better to make a call to action that is relevant only for those watching live, or both?
Yeah, this is a super great question, and it brings to light something that you can take into consideration with your strategy is your live stream available for replay? Do you make that available? Depending on the platform, you may have a choice or you might not. So yeah, you definitely want to take that into consideration. Because it's live, there's inherently kind of a time sensitive element to it. And even if somebody's watching the replay, it's definitely a replay of a live event. So you can create some really good scarcity with that, just like with any other sort of marketing outreach that gets people to take action quickly. So maybe during the live stream, you mentioned that it's only available for 24 hours or the week or whatever your audience will engage with. And so use that to your advantage, because live streaming is definitely front of consciousness, happening right now, and it's a limited time only. It's kind of like watching a sports game a month or two later. It's like, well, how relevant is the outcome at that point? Yeah. So in terms of social engagement and talking about it and everything else. So it's okay to have something that ends, like an offer that goes away after a certain period of time with your live streaming call to action, because it is live. If you didn't catch it, you missed out. And that gives you more incentive to catch the next one. And the more consistent you are with adhering to that, your audience will come up to speed with you and be like, yeah, I need to be on this call or I'm going to miss out. That creates that incentive to engage and to be there with you. And if they can't make it during the initial broadcast, then they catch it within the next day or whatever the timeline is. And that really creates a even more of a common bond between the broadcaster and the viewer, because you're there at the same time or within hours of this content going live. So definitely think about that and use that to your advantage. It's okay to have a time-limited offer on that call to action.
Great. Thank you, James. And you said have them catch the next one. So would you say that, and I think this is really important, especially when we're starting out, would you say that it's better, if possible, to try to live stream on specific days and times so that people know, okay, Yanni is live streaming on Thursdays at, 1 p.m. Eastern, or should we just live stream, sometimes in the morning, some other times in the evening? Should we try to keep a regular schedule?
If you're just getting started, it might be worth experimenting with that. It really depends on your audience and who you're trying to reach, and of course where they are. If you're broadcasting to specific areas or your audience is in a primary time zone or country region, then that will factor into the time of day that you choose to do your broadcasts, whether that's a special event or promotional posts. For a lot of things, like with Periscope or Facebook Live and things that are more immediate follower reach on those platforms, those are great to just randomly go live just for the fun of it. In fact, that kind of creates that element of surprise for your audience. You never know when they're going to go on live, and you just get a quick update. It's like, oh, cool, sweet. But if you're doing something that's more regular, let's say maybe you're a podcaster and you want to live stream some of your interviews, you could do that if you wanted to. That happens on a regular basis. So every Wednesday or every couple weeks, you do a certain time at a certain day. And this is this one featured live broadcast of your interview session. Or maybe you do a Facebook group and you live stream to that group every so often, once or twice a week at a certain time. And that creates a pattern. That's a good pattern for you as a broadcaster. And it's also a good habit and pattern to establish with your viewers. And that allows you to track that engagement and be front of consciousness even more. So the more touch points you create, the more likely you'll get people to hang around and consume more of your great content and become a super follower. So definitely take that into consideration. But in terms of the one-off events or the big launch events or different broadcasts you might do on more of a private channel or a paid type of membership thing, you want to pay attention to the time of day you schedule those and make sure you build up that energy around that specific broadcast. So those are kind of the big general tips for those types of scenarios that you want to pay attention to. The main thing is to just get out there and start experimenting. Don't create some master plan that you can't adhere to. You may think, oh, I can broadcast every 2 days at 3 p.m. for 30 minutes. It's like, well, maybe you should just try once a week, or you could do once a month to start with, or whatever you want to do, or just do random broadcast for 3 minutes and see how it goes. And then you'll get a feel for it and get comfortable with it, and your audience will give you feedback and you can adapt and grow with that.
Actually, that's a very good point you just touched upon, James, because I think it's important to really try to make our live streams something that is organic and is interactive. So it's not only about our plan and try to do what we want to do, but it's trying to do that and keep into consideration the feedback we may get, and then shape our future streams based on some of the feedback we get. Obviously, we may get very different feedback, so it's not about trying to please everybody, but it's about trying to take that feedback in, think about it, see if it makes sense to maybe change things a little bit based on that or not. And you talked about the fact that we can just go and live stream sometimes with the quote unquote element of surprise. And anyways, even if we do so, platforms like Periscope that's connected to Twitter or Facebook Live, they will notify our followers when we live stream, right? So that people we kind of will get to know, okay, James has just started a live stream, so I can join him right now.
That's right. Yeah, and that's a pretty powerful feature, especially if your audience is in that certain community and taking part in that media outlet. That's another good reason why you want to pay attention to where your audience is. Are they using Twitter more often than they use Facebook, or is it even better to do kind of your own YouNow channel or some other standalone app that works better for your audience? It really depends on the environment you want to create. And then you want to pay attention to the terms of service on each of those platforms so that whatever you're broadcasting meets those needs and doesn't get pulled because of copyright violation or some other content violation. But it's super important and helpful to leverage some of these social media platforms with the live streaming because you get these notifications. If you're a new broadcaster on Periscope, a lot of people that subscribe to similar channels will get notified, hey, so-and-so is on Periscope for the first time ever, and you'll get random people viewing your live stream. So you can even leverage that kind of rookie endeavor if you wanted to. So it's definitely a powerful tool to think about for sure.
You said it that it's important to look at the terms of conditions and terms of service and things like that. And you talked about having a custom channel. And in the case of us using our own custom channel, and maybe we can't rely on these automated notifications features, do you have any advice on how to go about marketing our upcoming streams?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people think, oh, I'm live streaming and everybody's going to want to tune in. Well, you've got to create the need to tune in, and you need to create the element of curiosity and deliver the goods once they do tune in. So I think you need to promote it like you would any other type of event, whether that's a public speaking engagement or a webinar or other type of a launch or something like that. Mm-hmm. You want to use your other media channels to help bring people over to that event, especially if it's a paid event. You need to spend some time promoting it. People are not going to go out of their way to pay you $5 or $25 or $100 to watch you live stream if they don't really know why they should be there. And that sounds like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how many people set up a live stream paid event and expect people to just buy the ticket and tune in. And they get nothing but crickets in the background. Where is everybody? So Use email. Email is a great way to do that. It's also a great way to deliver custom links or secret codes to get into the live stream. Use your social media channels. Facebook groups are a great way to communicate with people, or use a Facebook event and invite people to that Facebook event. And then that gives you more direct access to communicate with them about that specific event if you don't have their email address. Use Twitter. And of course, use some of the different live streaming platforms, social media wise, and do live streams promoting your special event live stream that may be a paid or members only type of event. And that's a great way to promote and get people to your bigger event.
What you're just sharing here with us, James, I think is gold, for the fact that you just said it, that it doesn't happen once every 10 years that somebody starts a live stream thinking, yeah, people are just going to show up, and then nothing happens. Nobody shows up. Right. That happens quite often. And I think is actually one of the mistakes we make. I know I certainly made that mistake when I started streaming. And speaking of mistakes, I know you have this resource, the 7 scenes or the 7 live streaming scenes. So can you share with us a couple of common mistakes you have seen people make when live streaming? I mean, in this conversation, we have already touched upon a couple for sure. Is there something else you want to add?
Yeah, obviously the big one is testing your internet speed,
right.
and I'll highlight that again, because even though you might test your internet speed right now and say, "Hey, I've got good speed," you want to test it at the time of day you're planning to broadcast, because sometimes those speeds will change, especially in residential areas or things where the internet service provider will limit the speed based on the time of day or based on demand or other network variables. So just because you have good quality access now doesn't mean that that will be the case 10 hours from now when you do your live stream. So try to pay attention to that and pay attention to where you're broadcasting and what those elements are. That becomes a much bigger issue in cellular, because the more people that are on the network, the slower that internet speed can get. So time of day and testing that location is super important. One of the big sins that we haven't really talked about yet is failing to engage your audience. And that's kind of an ironic thing, because you're live streaming, right? Well, I'm engaging my audience. Well, maybe yes, maybe no, because like we talked about the call to action, you also want to be very present with the other viewer on the other end of that live stream. This is a very great opportunity to be super personal and very up close with your audience. And the viewer on the other end of that live stream wants to be engaged. They're there to support you, but also to be supported in that we're sharing the same space and time. It's as though we might be having a conversation, but you don't acknowledge my presence. That's kind of what I mean by engaging your audience. Acknowledge that your viewers are there. Do call outs or shout outs to people, saying, "Hey, thanks for tuning in, Anna," or "Thanks for being here, Tom," or whatever. Try to engage with the comments that people are leaving. If you have chat enabled on the live stream, try to be personable with the way you interact with the camera. Look into the camera. Don't look off to the side. These are all important tips and small things you can do to really bring people into that experience with you. So that's probably a big one that I'd recommend thinking about and practicing. This doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to be the perfect broadcaster on your first live stream. So the more you do, the more you'll get comfortable with the medium, comfortable with the camera and the audio setup and everything, and you can really be yourself in front of the live streaming audience. And that will go a long way to establishing good rapport and successful call to action follow-up when you present that.
I'm glad, James, that you mentioned the engagement element of live streaming, because I think that's the reason why we want to live stream in the first place, to have a live interaction with our community. So we have to make sure that we actually engage with people. And the tip you shared of calling out a person by his or her first name, I think is very powerful. And it shows it's something that is definitely going to go through the person, because we all like when we are called by first name. It's the one word we really recognize. So I think it's definitely something to really think about and do. And as you well said, is not something that happens overnight, is not something that happens with a couple of live streams. It's something that, as many other things like podcasting, hosting webinars, writing, and many, many other things, you become better by doing. When it comes to the monetization side of live streaming, James, you said that we could use live stream as part of a product launch, for example. We could have a series of streams leading up to an event, a product launch, or something like that. Is there something you want to share, something you want to talk about when it comes to the monetization side of live streaming?
Yeah, I think that comes into sort of the overall strategy of why you're live streaming in the first place, and what you want to accomplish with it. If it's simply a tool to connect with your audience on a unique level or more interactive basis, then that's fine. Maybe you just do free streams and then a call to action for other elements in your business, or whatever infrastructure you have available to engage with. But sometimes the live stream might be the product itself. Let's say you're doing an event, and maybe it's a coaching call or some sort of educational event, or it's a concert or some other performing arts type of thing. There's different professionals that can give live streaming access to their audience on a paid basis because of the unique element of what they do. So it's okay to charge for your live streaming event if you're delivering that kind of value and experience. So if that's the case, you'll want to promote that as a product in its own right. And maybe that's tied in with a membership site where once a month you do a live stream. Maybe that's tied in with an artist's website where you kind of have your own weekly channel of, hey, here are the songs or the artwork I'm working on this week. And, members of my membership club or Patreon account or whatever get free access, or it's included in that membership. So you can do things like that where you're monetizing the actual live stream. I know other platforms have brought out things like tipping for the live stream or during the live stream. And that can be kind of fun. But again, it depends on the type of broadcaster you are and the type of content you're putting out. It might not make sense to, if you're just kind of doing a casual live stream, to say, hey, leave a tip if you want. It's like, well, maybe that's functional, maybe it's not. It really depends. Another aspect of live streaming that can be really cool is doing charity events or benefit events where you're live streaming something and you want people to donate to a cause, or you're doing a fundraiser for something. You could tie in monetization with live streaming for something like a Kickstarter event or some other crowdfunding type of initiative, or use live streaming as a bonus for one of those donations. That can be a really useful and creative way to use live streaming to give more kind of private behind the scenes access. So you're still providing value with the live streaming, but you're also having that exchange of value from the viewers. So those are just a kind of a short handful of ways to do that. And I go into a few other ways in the book that would probably take up an hour of conversation here. So,
well, thank you for sharing those few with us. And you said it again, it goes back to what we were talking about early on, the overall strategy. And you said we could be selling something on the live stream. We could monetize the live streaming itself by having it being a paid event. We could have tipping. I know there are certain platforms like Fire Talk, for example, or apps like I think it's called Busker that we can use that have the tipping or the paid event feature enabled. And you mentioned your book. So I think that throughout this conversation, which has been a sort of mini workshop on live streaming, you have pulled out quite many golden nuggets from your book. But I still have to ask you, James, what can people expect from your bestseller, Live Streaming Your Business, a guide for the creative entrepreneur?
it's really about all the kind of tips and tricks I've learned over the years of hosting live streams and also being on the technical back end of providing the service for so many people that have been live streaming. So a lot of these tips and tricks come from real world experience, like real kind of grit your teeth and try to get through it type of stuff. So, I've been in live production most of my life, whether that's been as a musician or setting up for events and doing live sound and video broadcasting and things like that. So a lot of this stuff comes from a very fundamental place of how do we put on the best event possible? How do we put our best foot forward and get the results we want by being personable and still professional with getting the result? And live streaming today is so exciting because we have all these tools that are available for a fraction of the cost that they were even 5 or 10 years ago. To do an HD quality stream with your phone walking down the street is just phenomenal. And so what's in this guide is really, I consider kind of a complete guide to live streaming technology and the strategy for entrepreneurs and those that want to creatively engage their audience with this medium and kind of try to skip some of the rookie mistakes that I've made or others have made, like testing your internet speed at the wrong time of day and forgetting to test later. Those are insights that could be really useful and kind of save your live streaming reputation later on if you have this big critical event. So it's really part encouragement to just get started and get doing it. It demystifies some of the technology of live streaming, and it takes your quality level to the next level if you're really looking to kind of amp up your production value a little bit more and be more professional with it and just incorporate it into your business.
Boom! There you have it. A few reasons why you should check out James Wasem's new book, Live Streaming Your Business, A Guide for the Creative Entrepreneur. And James, I want to say thank you so much. This workshop on live streaming has been so valuable. You have shared so much here with us. You mentioned some of the things to think about, some of the do's and don'ts. We talked about the gear. We've talked about the hosting side of things. You shared some advice for the marketing, the monetization side of things. So I think we really covered live streaming at 360 degrees, plus there is your book. The final question I have for you is, if somebody would like to connect with you or maybe has questions or would like even to hire you, because I know you do consulting as well, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. Yeah, that's probably best to just stop by my website, jameswasem.com, and you can have access to the book and everything. And if you go to since you're listening to this podcast, you can go to jameswasem.com/360, and I'll go ahead and give you the 7 streaming sins guide that has a lot of the tips that we covered here, but in written form, so you have them right in front of you. And you also get a free chapter from the book as well. So I'll make that available if you sign up from listening to this podcast. So that's jameswasem.com/360. And that's spelled, the last name is spelled WASEM, in case you're listening and didn't catch that.
Great. Thank you, James. And I'll make sure to link to that page in the show notes as well. Thank you for making that available. And you heard what James said. It doesn't matter when you're listening to this interview. If you want to learn more about live streaming, make sure to check out James' site, and in particular, the page he just mentioned, jameswasem.com/360, or simply go to the show notes page and you'll find a link to that and everything else we have talked about. James, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your advice, and congrats on the new book, man.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, it was great chatting with you, and I look forward to talking more live streaming soon.
So what did you think? Pretty cool, huh? Between today and last week, I think James did a fantastic job at really provide us with a 360-degree look at live streaming. We talked about the strategy, we talked about the gear, we talked about the light, the internet connection, having people take action, and monetization. James mentioned a couple of things, including his book, Live Streaming Your Business, and the PDF on the live streaming scenes. He mentioned that page for that, jameswasem.com/360, and I've actually added the link to that, as well as the book and everything else we've covered in this episode, over at yanilunga.com/episode 210. If live streaming is something that sounds interesting to you, then you can even reach out to James directly because he is part of the Podcast Growth Mastermind. So even though the Facebook group is about podcasting, James is there. He's actually quite active in the group. So that's one option to get in touch with him. This is it for this mini series on live streaming. In the next episode, next week, we're going to talk about some things you can do to save time and make your business more efficient. Really, really exciting stuff.
Thank you for listening to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. For more tips and tools, head over to www.yanilunga.com.